Okay, welcome back to the series of videos on lines. And now, after watching the kind of introduction video, we're going to get down into some examples. And this first example is something super common, something that you're definitely going to see. And it's pretty much find the equation for a line that passes through two given points. So these 2 points I just randomly chose, -1 and 0, -1 comma 0, and -4 comma 12. So whenever I'm given 2 points, my best bet is to always find slope first. So my goal is to find slope. The first thing that I want to do though is I want to label my y1, my x1, my y2, and my x2. And this will become apparent why I'm doing this in just a couple of seconds. But let's just say that this term right here, this 1 is going to be our x1, and this 0 is going to be our y1. This -4 is going to be our x2, and this 12 is going to be our y2. So the reason why I labeled this is because going back to the earlier video, we know that our equation for slope is y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. So labeling your points when you first start out on the problem will help you so that you can keep these terms here kind of straight. So let's go ahead and just plug these points into this slope formula here, and we'll see what we get for slope. So we know that our m is equal to y1. So y1 in this case is 0, and there's a fraction bar here. So we have our y1 minus our y2. So we have y1 is 0 minus our y2, which is 12. And then x1, so our x1 is -1, so we'll put in a -1 here, minus our x2, which is -4. And we do that just like that. Whenever I have negatives, I like to use parentheses just so that I don't drop any negatives when I'm doing this. So 0 minus 12 is going to be a -12, and then -1 minus -4 is, well, if we have a -1 and then a double negative here, this is going to become a plus. So we have -1 plus 4, so we're actually going to get a +3 down here. So our slope overall is going to be -4. We're going to have a slope of -4. So that's kind of how you go through and plug into the slope formula. As you get more practice with this, you won't have to do as much simplification as I did here, but one big rigorous example is probably good. So once we have slope, we can then pick any of these forms to kind of start with. If you remember from the previous video, once you find slope intercept, you can do algebra to get standard form. And then point slope, you just kind of plug in your slope and then you plug in your point. So let's just start with slope intercept form, and then we'll get the other forms from there. So our slope intercept form, if we remember from the previous video, was y equals mx plus b. And we know what our m is. We know that our m is going to be -4 for a line through these 2 points. So what I'm going to do, the only change that I'm going to make to this equation to start off, is I'm going to plug in our slope. So y equals -4x plus b. And all we need to do now is to solve for this b value. So we have this b, which is unknown, and we have this x and y here. So we have 3 unknowns in one equation. However, we're given 2 separate points up top here in the description of the problem. So what we can actually do is pick one of these points. I like to pick whichever point is going to make my algebra easier. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to plug in those points for x and y here. So I'm going to take this first point. Since there's a 0, it kind of makes the algebra a little bit easier. If you want to try, you can plug in this point and you'll get the same exact b value as I do. So let me just show you how I do this. I take my y1 and I'm going to plug it in for y here. So I have 0 equals -4, and then I want to take my x1 and plug it in for x here. So -4 times our x1, which is -1, And then we still have our b, so plus b here. So after we simplify this, we get 0 equals negative times the negative is going to give us a positive 4 plus our b value here. So now all we have to do is solve for b. In order to isolate b, we can just subtract 4 over onto this other side. So that's going to look like this, negative 4 equals b. And just like that, we have found our b value. So we know what b is, we know what m is. So then rewriting our slope-intercept form, what we get is y equals negative 4x minus 4. Because we have that plus b part, so plus a negative 4 is just going to be a minus 4. So there it is. So that's our slope-intercept form right there. So like I said earlier in the first video, whenever we have slope-intercept form, it's always our best bet to just get to standard from there. So in order to get to standard, we know that the standard form of a line is going to be this ax plus by equals c. And right now we have y equals something x minus something. So if we can move our x over onto this other side of the equal sign so that we have our x and y on the same side of the equal sign here, we can then pretty much have standard form. We just need to make sure that we're following the rules where a is positive and a, b, and c are all integers. So let's go ahead and do that. So what this is going to look like, I'm going to add 4 to both sides of this equation here. So I'm adding 4 and they cancel on this side and we get a positive 4x over on this side. So what I'm actually going to be left with is, let me just rewrite this really quick. This is a kind of important bit of algebra. So I'm doing this and I'm going to go ahead and add 4x to both sides of this equation. So they're going to cancel here and add here. So what we're left with is 4x plus y equals negative 4. So this is our standard form right here. One thing we just have to do, last but not least, is to check to make sure that we follow the rules of standard form. So the standard form rules were a has to be positive, so the term connected to our x should be positive, so we'll check that. A, b, and c have to all be integers, whole numbers. So what we have is we have a positive number for a, and we have 4, 1, and negative 4, so those are all integers. So this is our standard form of a line right there. So we have standard and slope-intercept form. So the next thing that we want to focus on is this point-slope form here. And if you remember in the past video, I thought of point-slope form as kind of separate almost, where you take your point-slope form and then you just plug in any point, and then you also plug in your slope. So we still have this original problem here, and on the last page we found that our slope, we did this calculation for our slope, and we found that our slope was equal to negative 4. So I'm just going to rewrite that here. So there's our slope, and we know that the slope-intercept form of a line has this form here. I'm going to rewrite that form. So it's y minus y naught equals slope times x minus x naught, where y naught and x naught, this is a ordered pair that lies on that line. So this coordinate x naught comma y naught, the only requirement for this is that it has to be on the line. So that has to be on the line. So in the original statement of this problem, we know that these 2 points here are going to be on the line. So we can pick any of these points and plug them in for y naught and x naught, and then we already know what our m is. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's pick negative 4 comma 12 for this one. So we're going to pick the point negative 4 comma 12. Again, it doesn't matter which point you pick. And once again, kind of like I did in the earlier part of the problem, I want to label my points. I I definitely want to avoid trying to switch any x's or y's. I want to make sure that I keep everything straight. So I'm going to label this point x naught, and this point here y naught. So I know what my x naught are, I know what my x naught is, I know what my y naught is, and I know what my slope is here. So now it's just about plugging it in to this form in order to get the full standard form, or not the standard form, my apologies, to get the full point slope form of this line. So that's going to be y minus y naught, right? And my y naught here is 12, so y minus 12 equals our slope. We know that our slope is -4, equals -4 times x, and it's x minus x naught. So it's going to be x minus, and then our x naught is -4. So kind of the last little bit of simplification here is that this guy is going to become a addition sign. So we have y minus 12 equals -4 x plus 4, and that right there, sorry, it was off the screen. So that right there is going to be our point slope form of the line. So just kind of as a quick review, we were given 2 points. We went ahead and we calculated slope as the first order of business. We did some algebra with our mx plus b form in order to find our b, and we got our slope intercept form. We then did some algebra on the slope intercept form to get to our standard form. And then the last thing we did was we took our original statement of the problem, took our slope, we picked one of these points, and we arrived at our point slope form. So stay tuned for some more examples, but that's kind of the first basic example that you'll probably see.